Meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. We are going to be following three agendas this evening. The first agenda will deal with a special meeting of council dealing with an application for an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. This is through Department of Planning and Development Services, report number 2011-65. Members of council, it's regarding the public hearing report for an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, file number D0901-11 and D1407-11, Humberston Shoe Park. That'll be followed by our Committee of the Whole meeting, which, as always, will be followed by our council meeting. So with that, I'll call upon Councillor Angie Demery for the prayer, followed by Mr. Joel Longfellow for the national anthem. Councillor Demery.
Dear Lord, please guide our hearts and our hands and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thoughts, and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance. Amen.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land, glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Joel, thank you. Wonderful as always.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My pleasure as always.
Members of council, if I can accept the motion to confirm the agenda, please. Mover and seconder, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Bodner. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening, members? With none, Mr. Aquilina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to you, members of council, staff, and those in attendance this evening. As the mayor mentioned, this is a city-initiated official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for properties located on part of lots 5 and 6 on Plan 768, and also known as Parts 1 and 2 on Plan 59R-14504. What the application proposes to do is to change the official plan from an open space designation to an urban residential designation, and also from a public and park zone to a site-specific R4 residential zone that would permit a single detached dwelling, a semi-detached dwelling, a duplex dwelling, a triplex dwelling, a street townhouse dwelling, and an apartment dwelling. This meeting is held in accordance with sections 17, 22, and 34 of the Planning Act, Mr. Mayor. What I will do this evening is I will give the method of the notice. I will then give an explanation of the procedure to be followed. I will then present Planning and Development Report 2011-65, which will get into more details of the application. We will then allow members of the council to have any comments to the application or to have any questions to myself, as it is a city-initiated application. We will then open up the meeting to those members of the public that wish to address council. I will then give an announcement respecting written notice of passage of the zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment, and I will give an explanation of future meetings to be followed. Mr. Mayor, this meeting was held in accordance with Section 17, 22, and 34 of the Planning Act, and also in accordance with Section 3 of Ontario Regulation 543/06 and Section 3 of Ontario Regulation 546/06. The method was mailed, the notice, was mailed to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, and a proper poster notice was placed on the property. As part of the circulation, members of council and your worship, we did receive comments from the public. One comment was received. I would like to read that as follows. It was received from Stephanie DeChico and Jeff Ring. They locate at 42 George Street. They indicate that they would like to see a single detached dwelling located on this lot and they are strongly against a semi, a duplex, triplex, apartment, or townhouse dwelling, and they hope that this is strongly taken into consideration. Before I move forward with the public comments that have came in from the agencies, Mr. Mayor, on your desk and all members of council, there is a reference plan, and I have enlarged it to show you parts 1 and 2. And also you'll see on the screen that I have highlighted the area that is under this application this evening. And as I mentioned, the application proposes to change the official plan from a public open space to an urban residential zone to support residential uses that are going to be proposed to be approved to permit the land for a single detached dwelling, a semi-detached dwelling, a duplex dwelling, a triplex dwelling, an apartment dwelling, and a street townhouse dwelling, with those zone provisions of the RT residential townhouse to apply to the street townhouse dwelling. Members of council will recall earlier this year there was direction from council to proceed with this meeting this evening to change the zoning of the property. That was given as the direction from council was to sever a portion of the Humberston Shoe Park to accommodate a playground to the west, to remove some of the equipment and to have new equipment on the property. The policies that affect this proposal are as follows. The regional policy plan designates the land as urban area, and importantly for this application, the strong policy states that it is to supply sufficient housing that is affordable, accessible, adequate, and suited to the needs of the full range of types of households and income groups in Niagara. The city's official plan and the adopted official plan both designate the lands as public open space. Those uses include all playgrounds, parks, all open space recreational type uses, schools, for example. The city's zoning bylaw zones the property public and park. The following uses are permitted in the public and park zone: an auditorium, a public day nursery, a public park, a school, and any public use. As council will see from the sketch, the severance sketch, or excuse me, the reference plan, the property has a frontage of 30.09 meters along George Street, which is 98.7 feet, and 48 meters, 158.7 feet along Erie Street. The zoning adjacent to this property is to the north is a second density residential zone, a third density residential zone. To the east is a third density and second density residential zone. To the south is an institutional zone, an R2 second density residential zone, a site-specific R2 zone that permits a stained glass studio. To the west is an R4 residential zone and a site-specific R2 residential zone that also permits a lumber yard on the property. The following agencies did comment on this application. The city's building division has indicated they have no objections. The city's bylaw enforcement division has indicated they have no objections, provided that the fence bylaw is adhered to. The Department of Engineering and Operations indicates that there are water and sanitary services along the frontage of the lots, however, that there are no storm sewer services along the frontages of the lots. The Department of Community and Corporate Services indicates they have no objections to this proposal, and the Conservation Authority, the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, indicates they have no objections as well. Mr. Mayor, this does conclude the Planning and Development Report 2011-65. At this time, I would ask if any member of council or yourself has any comments to this application or any questions of clarification to myself.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Members of council, any questions or comments? Councilor Dench.
Thank you. Dan, I know we spoke earlier today and we're talking about the zoning and whatnot. An R4 makes it kind of wide open, and I know I had asked you about an R2. making it strictly like a single-family dwellings for residential use only, kind of getting rid of, you know, the apartment, triplex, duplex kind of thing. Can you maybe tell me how, and I know there's some people from the community or that area thinking along the same lines, we'd like to keep it as a residential area. How do we go about, you know, just keeping it as an R2?
Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Dance. The R2 residential zone only permits a single-family detached dwelling. The R4 zone that is proposed this evening would permit a single detached, semi-detached, duplex, triplex, and apartment dwelling and a street townhouse dwelling. It was a direction of council back in February of this year that we proceed with those uses. So we are just following the direction of council from the February 14th, 2011 meeting. It's the pleasure of council what uses they want to provide on this property, and it's a pleasure of council as to what direction they would like to ultimately see on this property. That's why we're here this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Further? Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. Dan, under our drawing, there's, which are the two sections, very small squares. One is 31.471 meters and 18.221 meters. What are those for?
Mr. Aquilina?
That's what I'm asking.
Through Councillor Steele, I'm not.
These two sections that we see here, those aren't part of this.
That is.
These are?
Those aren't. Those aren't, yeah.
So,
The question for Councillor Steele is, on the drawing that you see up there, there are property lines. There are not legal property lines, so the property lines that you see on the screen aren't in fact true legal representation of the properties. The reference plan is the legal representation of the portion of the Humberston Shoe Park that is proposed this evening to be rezoned and changed to the official plan.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Councillor?
thank you, Your Worship. Through you. So those two small areas will merge in with the park then? Is that how it works?
Mr. Aquilina?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. Everything else to the west of what you see on parts 1 and 2 would continue to be the Humberston Shoe Park.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or comments, members of council? Councillor Kenny?
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Aquilina, just going along with my fellow councillor, Councillor Dench, is there any way, I know that came forward, both Councillor Dench and I were on vacation, I think in February, so I don't remember that being zoned as Zone 4, but is there any way we can limit that or make it that narrow or make it just single residential family dwellings in that neighborhood right now?
Mr. Aquilina?
At this point in the proceedings, can we do that now before it goes any further? Or, because I agree, I agree that it should be kept that way. I know there's not a lot of space there, but I hate to see a triplex or a duplex go up there. I'd like to keep it single-family dwelling. Can we do that at this stage of the proceedings is what I'd like to ask you.
Mr. Aquilina?
I know council at that time directed you that way, but now when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, that's not a good idea. You know, I'm rethinking, I guess. Like I said, I wasn't there. That was my vacation time, as is every February, but I still would like to know if that can be changed now. Possible?
If I can just jump in. Thank you, Councillor. We're receiving the report today.
I know we're receiving it,
questions,
yeah,
if I may,
okay.
if I may, Councillor. Questions are being asked, but I'm sure Mr. Eklund is going to explain the next steps, which will include a report. Okay. And when that happens, council will have an opportunity then to give direction. Mr. Aquilina?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. It is the pleasure of council. Council needs to be reminded that I'm here to provide you opinions and recommendations based on provincial policy, regional policy, and city policy. To me, without going into the details, it would be part of the recommendation report. It could be efficient use of land. That's what I look at. It's an infill development. I won't get into too much detail. It's a pleasure of council, but my recommendations may continue to lie on that we have some more density on that property.
Thank you, Councillor Kenny. Are there any further questions or comments, members? Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to read the following before I open this up to those members of the public. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment are adopted and approved, The person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the City of Port Colborne to the Ontario Municipal Board. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment are adopted and approved, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the Board, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or a public body as a party. This time, Mr. Mayor, I would like to open the floor up for those members of the public that wish to address council.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Are there any members of the public that would like to address council or ask any questions? Yes, sir, if you want to come on up and just state your name and your address, and the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you. Kim Lasicki, 7 Windsor Terrace, Port Colborne. I serve as a trustee at St. Peter's Lutheran Church. And this parcel of land may be something that we might be interested in the fact that our membership has declined over the years and we don't need the big building that we're in anymore. So if it were to be rezoned 4th density residential, would an institution be allowed to build on that property?
Mr. Aquilina?
No.
Dan, if you want to come on up here, take a seat at the staff desk, and I'm sure there might be a few questions for you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, the 4th density residential zone would not permit an institutional use on the property.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all I had.
Great, thank you. Now, having said that, if the property was sold to St. Peter's, they can make application for that type of use?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So just a clarification? Okay. Any further questions or comments, members of the public? With none, Mr. Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to read the following respecting announcement of written notice, excuse me, of the passage of the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. If you wish to be notified of the adoption of the proposed official plan amendment or approval of the zoning bylaw amendment, you must make a written request to the clerk. Only those persons and public bodies that give the clerk a written request for the adoption or notice of the passage of the zoning bylaw will be given such notice. At the back of the room, there is a sign-in sheet. If any member of the public wishes to sign that sheet, then we will ensure that you do receive a copy of the notice. Mr. Mayor, the explanation of the future meetings regarding this application is I will present a recommendation report for council's consideration at a very upcoming council meeting for council's consideration. Mr. Mayor, this does conclude the planning meeting under the Planning Act.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. And with that, I will ask members of council to put forward a motion to adjourn this portion of the meeting. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Butters, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you, members. And Mr. Aquilina, thank you. And for those folks that showed up this evening for this meeting, I thank you for your time. If we can now move on to our Committee of the Whole meeting, I'm going to ask the clerk to introduce any addendum items that she may have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there are 2 items this evening. The first being the addition of item 17, Historical and Marine Museum Report 2011-13. That's regarding the Enabling Accessibility Fund grant and request for proposal for museum accessibility, and this was circulated by addendum on September 8th. In addition, page 3 of Community and Corporate Services Report 2011-39 was inadvertently omitted from your agenda, and that's been circulated to members of council this evening. It's on your desks. It's also available on the city's website with the posting of the agenda in accordance with our public notice policy.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members of council, if I can have a motion to confirm the agenda, please. Councillor Elliott, Councillor Danch, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? Members? With none, move on to any items requiring a separate discussion this evening. Councillor Bodner?
Item 10, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Elliott?
Items 5 and 6, please.
Any further items? Councillor Butters?
Item number 4.
Further items. Members? Councillor Danch?
Number 3.
Further? Members of staff, any items required to be lifted this evening? With none, I'll accept the motion to move the remainder of the items on the agenda, please. Councillor Demarais, Councillor Bodnar, any questions or comments to that? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. The problem with that name there, Councillor Demarais? We do have one presentation this evening, members. We have Ms. Christy Shortall, Ms. Diane Santo of MMM Group Limited, and Mr. Jim Ayers of Cassells, Brock, and Blackwell. This in regard to the Port Colborne Energy Park and the Ontario Municipal Board pre-hearing scheduled for September 27th, 2011. Mr. Ayers, welcome. And I'm not sure if that's Ms. Shortall or Ms. Santo. Ms. Shortall, thank you. Okay, I hope everything's fine. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the status of the Nyan Energy Park project. As Ms. Shortall explained, Ms. Santo does send her regrets. She did want to be here, but something unforeseen came up, and she's having surgery today. So, she did, however, assist me with some speaking notes, and Christy Shortall is here to answer any technical questions that you may have. So, first off, we are very pleased with the cooperation that has been expressed by the municipal team while working together to bring this project forward and to hopefully truly achieve a development that is in the public interest. We note and recognize that there have been some bumps in the past. This has caused the project not to move forward as quickly as we would all have liked. However, these are in the past, and we look forward to continuing to work together with the city to develop an energy park that we hope will act as a catalyst for jobs and industry and growth and development. While this matter is still before the Ontario Municipal Board, there is still an opportunity to address this application through settlement, and we hope to continue to work towards that. As you are aware, the MMM Group developed a detailed work plan for this project that outlined the steps that were needed to move the application towards approval. Since that time, we needed to address an issue that was brought to the attention by the Conservation Authority, namely the determination of the 100-year floodplain. As such, a local consultant, Upper Canada consultant, Jason Schooley and his team, undertook this critical study to determine the impacts of the floodplain on the site. At this moment, we are awaiting a Conservation Authority reply to the recommended approach so that the development may proceed. We have requested through the consultant preliminary responses to be provided within a few weeks, at which point Nyan has committed, where possible, to retain local consultants to undertake the required studies. And these studies include an emergency response management plan, a risk assessment, stormwater management, servicing report, tree preservation plan, environmental plans, an implementation plan, and updates to the existing planning rationale, noise, traffic, air, and hydrogeology reports. We will be going to the Ontario Municipal Board at our second pre-hearing conference on September the 22nd, and we will report all of this to the board at that time. We will also be seeking a meeting with regional staff to address their position regarding the need for a new regional official plan amendment and additional studies. We are seeking council support with our position to the region that a new application is not required, as the region simply closed their file for administrative purposes. We see no reason why it shouldn't be reopened and processed within the original application file. It is very common for a large, complex application such as this to have refinements made to it. An example in this case is the removal of the LNG, liquid natural gas component, and the wind farm component, given that there were significant concerns over these components. These have been replaced by the solar component. Therefore, it's Nyan's position that no new file should be demanded by the region, and we would very much seek your support on this position. I would also like to state that Nyan and its consultants, MMN, would be pleased to prepare and attend a public meeting to discuss the nature of this development further with the public, should council deem necessary. So if you have any technical questions on the plan which was distributed, Ms. Shortall will be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ayers. Members of council, are there any questions or comments? Members of staff, any questions or comments? Mr. Ayers?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and we appreciate your time this evening. Members of council, we will now move on to delegations. We have 3 delegations this evening. Our first delegation is Mr. Vic Kerschel of the Alzheimer's Society, Niagara Foundation, regarding the 16th annual Coffee Break campaign. Vic, always a pleasure. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Retirement seems to be agreeing with you.
There we are. Thank you for the invitation for my annual visit to you on behalf of the Alzheimer's Society of Niagara. I'm currently vice chair, and I'm here to give you a little bit of history on our campaign for the coffee break. As we call it, Make Your Coffee Count. A little bit of the history is that our society across the country has utilized this coffee break idea over 16 years to raise funds to assist people afflicted with Alzheimer's. This year, as you can see, Freshco and Sobeys are involved, and through that company, Cindy Cameron of Sobeys is our honorary chair, so we're very grateful for their support. They're kicking off the campaign on the 15th, that is this week, at their St. Catharines site. We, of course, would like to have as many people supported as possible. Now, the 15th is the official coffee break day, but obviously many of our hosts, have alternate dates that they utilize to provide that coffee break facility and the fundraising that goes with it. You all know Alzheimer's is a very progressive degenerative brain disease that's very hard on families. And you also know that Niagara has a very high percentage of seniors in our community. We actually have some 8,200 people in Niagara suffering from Alzheimer's. And the Alzheimer's Society of Niagara is really the mainstay that both those patients and their families, their caregivers, have as a support service. We currently raise 1/3 of our $1.8 million budget. That is $600,000 through the community. And the coffee break theme, of course, is one of our major fundraisers. Last year we raised $95,000 through the coffee break program, and we hope to be able to reach $100,000 this year. Now, I know you as a council in the city have been very supportive of that effort over the past, and I'm here to both thank you for your past support and to hope and to make it public that the current program is on again, and to look forward to your participation again this year. So with that in mind, we're hoping that you will display this prominently on whatever day you choose. And I'd like to present you, Mr. Mayor, with the package that the Society provides for anyone hosting the coffee break.
Thanks,
so
Vic.
thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
And we'll be definitely doing it again once again this year.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vic.
Appreciate your help.
Appreciate it.
And I'm sure all of the patients who are suffering from Alzheimer's appreciate your help. So
Thanks, Vic.
thanks again.
Thank you, Vic, and we will be doing it once again, as we do every year, over the Market Square. But Vic, just a quick note of appreciation for yourself as well, Vic. Thank you for your time as well. You've been doing this for quite some time, ever since your time in Welland. I know you've been at this for a long, long time, so not only do we appreciate it, but as you say, I'm sure a lot of the folks that are battling this terrible disease and their families do appreciate the time you're putting in, and all the other volunteers, so thank you. If I can call upon our second delegation, Mr. Corey Simons. I don't see Mr. Simons in attendance. We will move on to Mr. Bill Augustine regarding the unsafe conditions at the intersection of Elm Street and Park Streets. Mr. Augustine, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And
members of council, staff, and other people here, good evening. I would like to give a little preamble to this, and I will not try and take too much of your time, but I have been a resident there since 1960. And I know if it's a joke or not, but I bought the house on my birthday, watched the Maple Leaf Mill burn down, and that was it. We moved in. Now, those years, 40 years and the 11 years now, there have been problems from day one when we moved in. But one of the things that I would like to bring to council's attention is the fact that there's been some accidents there. One was where a poor lady, she hit the train, I don't know why, but she got squeezed by the signpost and the train, and she died almost immediately. Another one was a motorcycle that was coming south on the tracks, and the car turned left in front of him, and he wound up in front of my house. Another one was a little girl that went across on Park Street, across Elm Street, and she had an accident. The next one was, this was a lucky one maybe for her, but not for you people, was the accident where the van flew over the tracks in the air and hit the light standard down in Elm and Clarence. Now, the main problem there is it is hard to see traffic approaching from the north. As a result, you might pull up a little too far and then suddenly have to back up because you don't see the car coming. And a lot of the problems are there are some speeders, not everybody, but there are a few of them. And these are the ones that you have to be careful with. Anyways, so I was saying, I did approach your former CAO, is it, Mr. Cottrell? He asked me for suggestions, and I gave them to him. And a couple of years later, I approached him and I said, did you do anything about it? He said, no. I said, did you bring it to council? No. I said, why not? He said, I didn't want to. Now, that doesn't make for a good relationship between a person who has problems and gets that kind of an answer. I did at the time suggest you might put up like a big concave mirror on the pole across the street so you could look and see. I did hear after that there were a few people on the end of Elm Street got rid of that in a hurry. I don't know whether they were young people, old people, or who, but they vandalized it. So maybe that wouldn't have been a good idea at all. But I'm not here tonight to be belligerent. I'm not here to demand or anything like that. But I can bring up a couple things that would maybe make you stop and think, I hope. You have 6 stop signs at Mitchell and Durham and Fraser. You have 6 more at Ferris, Fraser, and Durham. And you have a stop sign right up here at the post office. Now, I don't know, I do know why and understand why the ones on the east side were put in, because of the nickel plant traffic, which amounted to about 2,400 cars a day. Now, that's a lot of traffic, and I can understand that. But I just, I'll be honest, I wonder why we have the one at Elm and Charlotte. Is it for the church? Is it for the post office? What is it? So what I would ask is that you consider, and I'm not demanding, I just want to see an answer to this. Because in the wintertime, if you are trying to access Elm Street from the west side, from Park Street, most of the time you can't see because the snowplows aren't doing their job, and they're not doing it on purpose. The snow gets piled up, it's furrowed up, and you cannot see it all. So what you do is you have to sneak out sort of and just hope there's nobody coming. And this has gone on for quite a long time. That was one of the reasons why I went to Mr. Cottrell. Because now, I have to say that I don't think it's been as bad lately. But I have to admit I wasn't around lately too much for other reasons. But anyways, I would ask that you might consider as one option putting stop signs up. If they can stop at the post office, they can stop at the light here, why not stop there? When I hear motorcycles going over those tracks from here to Main Street, I know they're not going the speed limit. They are abusive. At 6:30 in the morning, when you suddenly get woke up with them zooming over, I have to say maybe they get mad and zoom more if they have to stop. I don't know. I'm not trying to influence you in any way, but I would just ask that council consider my problem. And many others have talked to me about it, and I guess I sort of was the one chosen, not because I asked to, but because of the problems there. And now I can also say on your behalf that I can go out through the apartment building, but that's private property there. It's not public. Now there's one other thing that was done that I still can't figure this out. Signs put up saying hidden intersection. I don't know why it's hidden. So that's what I have to say, Mr. Mayor. So I guess I'm kind of pleading to try and do something about it. I'm not demanding, as I said. I'm not trying to be belligerent. I'm just trying to act like a gentleman. And I thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and council members.
I thank you, Mr. Augustine. I appreciate your time this evening. Members of council, are there any questions or comments to the presenter? With none, once again, Mr. Augustine, thank you. I appreciate your time this evening to come out and bring that to our attention. I just wish I would have had that conversation with you myself, and I do apologize that you never got no satisfaction with speaking with our former staff. So, again, we'll deal with it tonight. Rest assured.
It might have been just an oversight. I don't know.
Sure.
I'm not here to condemn.
Sure.
As I said, I hope I said that.
Yeah. Well, and regardless, it was an oversight, and I do apologize for that. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did not have a question to Mr. Augustine, but maybe through you to Mr. Hanson, if we can ask for a report back with regards to this intersection, taking into consideration the summer season and the winter season, and what may be done there to alleviate any problems, and if that can be brought back to council.
Mr. Hanson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can certainly take a look at it. Just as a little background, this issue has been looked at in the past. It is a problem in terms of sight lines, southbound traffic on Elm Street. The problem with this intersection, we'll deal with it in the report. We're dealing with two fixed points of very different elevations. We have the railway tracks on one side, Mr. Augustine's property on this side, and a very narrow roadway in between. There's really no way to raise that roadway without impacting Mr. Augustine's property. We've looked at several options in doing that, but we'd be happy to do a report and get back to council on it.
Councillor?
That's actually fine, and if there's any past reports, if those could be included also, if those ever did come to council in the past, that'd be fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If I can have a motion to that effect, Councillor, and seconded by Councillor Elliott. Are there any further questions or comments? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ron. Drive the road every day, and knowing that it was coming forward tonight, I guess I paid special attention to it lately. I guess looking at it, my question would be, can you make them both sides of Park Street one way, running off of Elm Street? And I guess, I see you shaking your head, no. I guess because the one side runs into the apartments with no exit going on to, back onto Clarence? Okay.
Mr. Hanson, if I can have a response?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Elliott's correct. I mean, there's private property at the end of the dead-ended road along, so it can't be one way. There has to be a two-way access to it. We've looked at this as another solution. Unfortunately, it ends, as Mr. Augustine indicated, in private properties. There's no way to use that sort of a solution to it.
Councillor, that's fine. So we can expect a report back. Members of council, all those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. And once again, Mr. Augustine, thank you. Go ahead. Come on up.
May I be kept abreast of the consultation process? I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Keep up the good work of that. Really.
Absolutely. Mr. Hanson, if we can keep the Augustines in the loop. Great. With no further questions or comments, members, I will now go into my mayor's report. Short one this evening, and it is, in fact, with respect to the tripartite committee that was established a few months ago to deal with the review of the hospital improvement plan. You may have heard, we met on Friday, and with that, essentially, it created some opportunity. It was a great meeting. We met with Dr. Smith, the supervisor that was brought in to deal with the Niagara Health System issues, that being both board activities as well as those activities with respect to the administration. Once again, it was a good meeting. Went there with the intent to try and establish a terms of reference, which we were tasked to do, and essentially left with not only a terms of reference being utilized as a guideline, but also having the committee actually at the table for the process that involves both the HIP review and the review of the NHS. I have to say, it was a meeting that really, when you walked out of there, you felt optimistic that something was actually going to get done. And I think you recognize that upon the minister's recommendation to the LIN to establish a tripartite committee, what we were tasked to do was essentially come forward with the terms of reference. And that was it. When we met that day, we felt it necessary that both processes would work in tandem with each other. Both the review of the HIP that the tripartite committee was involving themselves in terms of the terms of reference, and then beyond that with a consultant that would have came on board and proceeded with that review, and that work in tandem with the review of the Niagara Health System. With that, I made a motion at that meeting that in fact we shelve, we don't get rid of, but we shelve the tripartite process and create an opportunity for that same group, along with Dr. Smith, to one, establish an inclusive process that establishes us at the table. So it's not just a terms of reference that we're proceeding with now. It's actually a terms of reference that will be used as a strict guideline for the HIP review and the Niagara Health System review. As well, as I said earlier, we will now be at the table for both those processes versus only being at the table to establish a terms of reference. We will, in fact, proceed with an inclusive process that, of course, will involve all those that would be expected to be involved, the public, patients, medical professionals from across the entire region. Once again, an opportunity to review the Niagara Health System board activities, an opportunity to review the Niagara Health System administration, and, as was established from the minister's directive, an opportunity to review the hospital improvement plan, which brings me to my last 2 points. Members of council, nothing is off the table. The supervisor, as well as the committee, the LIN, as well as the regional representatives, be myself, Chair Burrows, and Mayor Martin from the town of Fort Erie, we're very clear in ensuring that people understand that there's nothing going to be left off the table. And having said that, the LIN has agreed that the hospital improvement plan review will in fact include what has been implemented as well as what has yet to be implemented. So all in all, a quick meeting, but a meeting that I think, and I think you would agree, but I don't want to speak for you, covers everything that we were looking for, plus more. And quite frankly, very optimistic. All members were around the horseshoe. Optimistic that we have established opportunity, once again, to review the NHS board activities, the NHS administration activities, and the review of the HIP, both what was implemented as well as what has yet to be implemented. So some great news. So we look forward now to moving forward with a very inclusive process that will include all of what I have mentioned. So with that, members, are there any questions or comments? Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there an attached time frame to this?
To the entire review, well, we're hoping sooner rather than later in terms of getting it done, but I think the longest it will go, and I did ask that question, the minister has recognized that it may take up to a year. However, we're jumping in. We're jumping in with both feet, and I have to give some credit to those members running the horseshoe, Dr. Smith included. There's no question that with the comments that were made, all the folks are eager to jump into an inclusive process that will, in fact, review the Niagara health system, and to ensure that when the review is done, that, and I think Dr. Smith did make this quote, and I will quote, that although we might not create a perfect system, we'll create a better system. And he stated that, and I'll tell you, since 2000, and I'm talking since the NHS has taken over our hospital and system, I haven't felt this optimistic since then. So, and that credit has to be given to those who run the horseshoe with respect to, one, establishing an inclusive process, two, that nothing's off the table, and three, that and again a quote from Dr. Smith, that compromise will be in the air with respect to everything that we do talk about. The minister has made it very clear that it will not be a political response, it'll be a clinical response. So there's going to be some realities attached to putting in place proper clinical plans for the Niagara health system. But as I stated just as late as last week in a letter to the editor, if in fact we're to be one hospital at 7 doors, then we should have one emergency clinical services plan that's consistent throughout the entire region, regardless of what site or what door our residents go through. The bottom line is that when you walk through one of those doors, you're being taken care of by the Niagara health system. And whether they wheel you down the road or they wheel you down the hall, everyone gets the same level of care, that being equitable health care. And that's the mindset that we're starting from. So again, very optimistic, and I look forward to not only working with Dr. Smith, but also working with those folks who run the horseshoe, as well as, more importantly, the folks that are in the business, the medical providers, service providers, as well as the community at large. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. I mean, you just did touch on your letter to the editor, but I do have to congratulate you on it. Clarifying some comments that were made with regards to the Port Colborne General Hospital, both past and present operating procedures there. It was an excellent letter, and there was another member of the community that sent in a letter also, actually a former, she was my wife's boss at the nursing supervisor when my wife worked at the hospital. And she, hers was in later, but both those letters were very to the point and did clear up a lot of misinformation that is out there. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And I too want to take this opportunity to thank and congratulate Donna Burrow for the letter she wrote. She was very specific in terms of the services that we had, that we lost. And once again, with the help of Joanne Ferriccioli and our team here in Port Colborne, our medical team, the docs and the medical professionals, we have been able to articulate that same desire with respect to what we feel should be existing in our hospital or reestablished in our hospital. And with that, we're hoping that this process will not only identify it, but hopefully go down the road of reestablishing it. So once again, very optimistic. So we're looking forward to the process, but I'll be sure to include you guys and keep you in the loop. And for any of you folks that want to be involved in the process, there will be that opportunity. Okay? Any further questions? With none, we'll move on to the Regional Council's report. Councillor Barrick, welcome.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, there's no doubt that Kevin Smith has provided a glimmer of hope for us in Niagara. And I'm sure that with yourself, Chair Burrows, and Councillor Martin, or Mayor Martin, as part of that tripartite committee, will ensure that our views are heard, in particular South Niagara. My councillor's report tonight, Mr. Mayor, will be brief as well. I just wanted to touch upon a couple of things since I was here last. Regional Council voted to bring in a staff hiring freeze, as I'm sure many around this horseshoe may be familiar with, shutting down new hiring except for a few departments. The decision will keep the region from replacing many vacated positions until 2013. I feel we cannot continue to fund an ever-increasing regional government when the taxpayer itself is finding it tough to make ends meet. Residents are tightening their belts, and so must we. Although the motion will not see staff lose their jobs, it will force the region to look at where it can slim down. No new positions can be created, and but for a few exceptions, council will have to approve filling any vacant positions. The freeze will stop the region from automatically replacing employees who move on or retire. It will affect the region and its agencies, boards, and commissions, but the Niagara Regional Police Services Board and Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority are exempt. So are jobs with high turnover, such as positions in nursing homes, water and wastewater treatment, emergency medical services, and student jobs. I think those points are important to be made, that those important positions are not being considered for part of the freeze. The freeze, however, will be in effect until December 31st, 2012. They can only be filled after a management review and approval by senior region staff and Council's Corporate Services Committee. There's currently over 3,000 regional employees. I wanted to mention also, Mr. Mayor, regional transit has come together, as you know, and Councillor Bodner knows. We've been working on that for quite a while. The region is the coordinator of the service. The service is being provided by the existing service providers in the region. So St. Catharines, Welland, Niagara Falls Transit, with now a cooperation with the region of Niagara. I won't get into too much detail because I know that our treasurer, City of Port Colborne treasurer, will get into more detail in a little while on that. The other thing I wanted to also follow up with is last time I was here, I believe I mentioned a $300,000 rebate to the City of Port Colborne for water wastewater reconciliation. We've had a meeting at our budget last week to consider year-over-year reconciliation rather than a one-time. So that's not confirmed until our next meeting, but I did want to mention that I, as well as I believe yourself, Mr. Mayor, will be certainly endorsing that proposition. A municipal performance measurement program report came out for 2010 as well, and that's mandated by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, which basically enforces municipalities to submit performance information. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of items that I thought were interesting anyway. So what I have are Niagara region numbers and also Ontario averages for those same things. So for example, local government, the total cost for governance and corporate management as a percentage of total municipal costs for the Niagara region is 2.2%. 2.2% of its budget goes to corporate governance, where it's 3.7% average in Ontario. Police services, total cost for police services per person in Niagara is $302. In Ontario, it's $271. Roads, total cost for paved roads per lane kilometer, $9,300 for Niagara, $13,000 average in Ontario. Wastewater, total cost for the treatment and disposal of wastewater per megaliter, $521 for the region, $490 average in Ontario. And just one more, if you'll bear with me, for solid waste management. Average total cost for solid waste management, that's collection, disposal, and diversion, is $126 for Niagara and $140 in Ontario. So there's some mixed results in there. Clearly, Niagara is doing well in many of these, and clearly we need work in others. So overall, I think this is a good performance measurement for us to be able to find those efficiencies and compare us with the rest of the province. The last item I did want to mention, Mr. Mayor, is our budget process has started at the region. We're starting earlier this year. Last year was a little pushed off because of the election, and we don't have that this year, at least not a municipal election. So there's a couple of open houses. One is October 24th. for a wastewater, waste management open house at regional headquarters, October 24th, from 7 till 9 p.m. I found that very informing last year. I'm sure it'll be informing again this year. Public engagement session for the budget itself is October 26th. There's two. The one on the 26th is in Lincoln Town Hall, town of Lincoln. The one in South Niagara is in the town of Fort Erie. That's November 2nd, 7 to 9. So the last year I took Councillor Steele's recommendation to the region to get some of these meetings outside of the regional headquarters. And it looks like Fort Erie is close as we got so far. Maybe Park over next year. But for now, Fort Erie. That's my report this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Members of council, any questions or comments to the regional councillor? Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one question. Councillor Barrick, you mentioned something about a $300,000 wastewater rebate coming to the city. And did I hear you say that it's not going to be paid in one lump sum? Is that what you, so it's going to be paid to us in one lump sum? That's
Councilor
what I'd
Barrett?
like to know.
Thank you, Councillor Kenny. I don't believe I said that it wasn't going to be paid in one lump sum. However, there is a story behind that because
There's always a story.
we did, I think we brought it up at the last meeting.
Yeah.
The region is giving back that money because it's Port Colborne ratepayers' money. They
Right.
overpaid, plain and
Yes, we
simple.
overpaid, yeah.
Getting it back with one caveat, I believe, and that is the city of Port Colborne owed the region money. And I can't recall what the amount was. I don't know the details. It eats up a lot of that.
I believe it was about $270,000. We had a payment that was owed due to the storm that we had a few years back.
Okay.
And with that storm, we had some water enter the system, us and the township,
Sure.
or town of Fort Erie, because of the amount of snow and water that got into the system that had to
Right.
be treated. There was a $270,000 bill. We were reimbursed because of what happened last year with the overpayment, about $300,000. So we netted out with a $30,000 plus.
Oh.
So we're receiving a check for $30,000.
Keep in mind, if I may, they are very separate issues, though.
Right, yes.
The fact that bill from 2006 wasn't brought to the city's attention or paid
Right.
is separate from this.
It's separate,
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Mr. Sinez, do you want to comment on that?
And Mr. Mayor, we have received the check from the
Have we?
region.
And he's put it right in his bottom drawer.
The sewer drawer. The sewer drawer.
Thank you, Councillor Barrick, and I appreciate your comments about the reconciliation as well. I think all the mayors as well as regional councillors appreciate that, especially those mayors and regional councillors from municipalities that throughout the last 2 or 3 years have been seeing a reconciliation in a negative. What that basically means, we met about this on Thursday at Committee of the Whole, is reconciliation is the order of the day now when it comes to water wastewater. So if you pay too much, you get it back. If you don't pay enough, you pay the following year. So it'll be built into the regional rates the year after. So the bottom line, however, and I think Councillor Barrick alluded to it, it's fairness and it's all based on reconciliation. Thanks, David. Members of council, your turn. Councillor's items, new business. Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I have two issues. The first issue, through you to Mr. Hanson, can you tell us what's going on in the corner of Mellenby and Main? And the reason I'm saying that is we just finished this area 6 weeks ago. And if you come by there, there's lines all over the place that have been drawn and spray painted on there. They're ripping out some sidewalks. I thought it was another issue. I came in and found out it was a completely different issue. And I think the citizens need to know why this is happening, because I think it's important to recognize the fact that our staff have done a good job, and now the contractor is the one that is replacing certain things that he should not have gummed up. That's the only way I can put it.
Mr. Hanson.
Let's allow Mr. Hanson.
Mr. Mayor, through you to Councilor Doucette. As a matter of course, with every construction project, a list of deficiencies is compiled during the course of construction. We hold back, 10% hold back on all payments that go through to be released towards the end of the project pertaining to deficiencies, correction of any deficiencies on the site. We went through this operation with the general contractor about 2 weeks ago, prepared quite an extensive list of deficiencies, anything from minor cracks in the sidewalk to repairs to the flower boxes, the street lights, all these different things. And there's a list of deficiencies to be corrected. So that is underway. We have the assurances of the general contractor that all these deficiencies are going to be corrected by the end of September. And in fact, the work you see there today and ongoing for the next week or two are corrections, cracks in sidewalks, arms on the street lights, this sort of thing that are being fixed at the contractor's cost. These are all things that shouldn't have happened, or they have occurred during the construction for whatever reason, and these are all being fixed prior to the final release of holdback for the project.
While you're up, Ron, if you can make mention once again, because I'm constantly being questioned about this, and I actually had a question to you in terms of timing, deadline timing, yes, with respect to the Weir Bridge. And what's been the holdup? What's the problem? And what's the timing on it? And in fact, are we going to be making it to the deadline?
Yes. Again, we met with the general contractor about 2 weeks ago. The holdup with the bridge itself, there's a couple issues on it. And really, the bottom line on this thing is that the structure itself, the Weir Bridge deck structure, is in very poor condition, as we're finding. So as the contractor went along and tried to remove just the surface of the sidewalk, which we are going to replace under this contract, there were some large pieces of concrete that were deficient and had to be replaced. So we had to do some training. The contractor has to do some training for over water type construction. There were issues with the deck itself and how to treat it, and this involved negotiations with the St. Lawrence Seaway Authority and so on. So that is going forward as of the meeting in dealing with the deficiencies and the outstanding work on the bridge, which is really the only construction left on the project. We've been assured by the contractor this work is going forward now and will be done by the end of September. Our funding for the project is secure until the end of October 31st of this year. So we're very confident this work's all going to be done, and the funding is not in jeopardy in any sense.
Now the work that's being done on the Weir Bridge is being funded by the St. Lawrence Seaway?
Partially. The work by the contractor on the concrete work itself is funded by the Seaway. The remainder of the work, we have this 2/3 funding formula where the Seaway is a partner with the Region of Niagara and the City of Port Colborne. So the lookouts on the bridge, the new lighting you see there, the new sidewalk is being funded through the CIP program.
So what we're going to see on the bridge is 2 lookouts, one on each side, the east and west?
Yes, 1 lookout on each side that have it's a steel grating type thing where visitors can actually go out and stand at the weir and actually see the flow of the water and so on. It's quite an attractive feature. You're going to see a nice decorative fence to replace that cross fence that's there now, and of course the lighting, the new lighting's in place, and new concrete on the sidewalk. So it's going to be a very attractive feature once it's completed.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Councillor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Hanson. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The other issue is strictly to let councillors know that before going up to the Ottawa area for a vacation, I met with a citizen who was very concerned with certain areas of the city that have senior citizens that are walking around. And he was talking about, well, are there any way of putting a sign somewhere to tell people they're senior citizens, be careful, and so on and so forth. Lord and behold, going through Ottawa, there were signs in one area that we went through. Therefore, just to let you know that individual will be coming to the city, will be coming to council to discuss this, and maybe as a group. Now, in between that, Mr. Heil has now contacted, or is in the process of contacting Ottawa, I believe, to find out what their signs look like, because there are areas in town here where we have senior citizens that are walking constantly. They're out, they need to be, and yet there are people that are speeding around the area. Elgin Street is the Schultz area is a perfect example of that. We need to put some signs up to tell people this is a senior area, slow down. I mean, normal rate of age, your reaction isn't as fast as it would be if you were 20. Therefore, it becomes more dangerous for you, and this is a way of allowing them to enjoy being outside, especially on days like today and some of the days we've had this summer. So he would like to see some signs up. I know we've had studies in the past at the corner of Elgin and Steele where we've said, well, it doesn't warrant a light. Well, maybe we don't need to put a light. Maybe we just need to put a bunch of signs out saying there's a bunch of seniors here, guys. Slow down. That's a possibility. So just so that the councillors know that this will be coming, I believe it'll be sometime in October. And from there, we should have an answer from Ottawa and so on. So.
Thank you, Councillor Doucette. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, I just wanted to make a correction on an article that appeared in the Tribune in regards to an AMO conference that I attended, and Councillor Elliott. I did not stay at the Hilton. I stayed at a friend's house and made it most cost efficient for this city to attend this conference. It was a really good conference. Councillor Elliott and I had some time we spent together, but we each took our own interest and brought those interests back to, sent it off to staff from things that I heard and listened from. But it's unique in that when you go to these conferences, you know what? Whether it's a large municipality or a small municipality, they all have the same problems. Same problems that we're facing here and trying to budget. It's just, maybe there's a little bit bigger, but when you sit down and talk to them, their problems are the same. But I just wanted to make it clear that though the article said I stayed at the Hilton, I did not stay at the Hilton. The second one is, again, Mr. Hanson, it's to you, Ron, in regards to a request I made about an advanced green at Mellenby to cross, turn left. You know, when all the traffic funnels down towards that middle bridge, because the Jackknife Bridge is up, and then you have everybody from Port Colborne coming down the Port Colborne Bridge, from Clarence Street Bridge heading down. Is there an advanced green, or have we taken a look at that advanced green? Because I've had a request about that, again, asking what's happening with that, so you could tell me.
Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That request, we don't have a response to it yet. It's with the region. We've made that request. It's a queuing issue, and we're looking for regional traffic to give us a response on that.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Thank you, Councillor Kenny. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things quickly to Mr. Sinez. Two reports I want to know what the progress is. Financial reports with regards to 2010 financials of the city, where we ended up. It's almost halfway through September, and I don't recall seeing any financials for fiscal 10. Secondly, it's that time of year again when everybody's asking, how'd you make out at Canal Days? Well, we have a financial position of Canal Days at the end, where we ended up. Thirdly, I guess, as Councillor Kenny said, AMO was great. Unfortunately, I don't have any friends in London. So I didn't stay at the Hilton.
You stayed at the Hilton, did you?
No, I didn't stay at the Hilton. Close next door to it, but it was interesting. As the first time there to see that, in fact, all the municipalities across Ontario basically suffer the same troubles that we do. Financial impacts from the provincial government, how the government is going to impact on us. Insurance problems, I think, was one thing that people really had a keen interest in. And arbitration reared its ugly head in just about every conversation you heard or listened to. So it was interesting to go to. Brought some things back that I'd like to talk to Dan about later on with regards to downtown. Actually took a tour of the downtown London to see how they revitalized it. John Labatt Center, took a tour of that. Absolutely amazing. If we could pick that up and bring that here. I don't know if you guys toured it when you were looking for design. What's that? What they did was a little beyond health and wellness. Entertainment complex.
Financially as well.
Yeah. So got a couple of good leads on some things that we might be able to implement with ours. So it was really good. I guess the last thing I wanted to bring up, partner in Councillor Barrick's statements, when he's talking about how the region measures up against the rest of the province, Niagara region, do we measure ourselves against municipalities of like size? Is there metrics that we use to see how we perform against cities that, you know, are 20,000 and under or 25,000 and under, just to see how we perform against other municipalities? And if we don't, is there any way that we could?
We do. Mr. Sinez, you have a few questions there.
Yes. Thank you,
He's
Mr.
looking
Mayor.
for an answer on.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Elliott. First item, the financial report for 2010 is underway. As you know, with the 2009 and the capital asset and all that, that's really put us behind the 8 ball. So right now we have the auditors scheduled to come in before the end of this month, and we're just finishing up some of the final accounting for 2010, and then the auditors will be in and perform their audit, and then the financial report will be coming soon after that. So unfortunately we are slowly getting caught up, but because of where we were for the 2009 capital assets and all that, that really put us behind. So we're trying to get that caught up and getting set up for budget for 2012 also, which I'll talk about a little later. Canal Days 2011, that financial report will be going to the committee, Canal Days Committee in October. They're meeting in October. There's still a few expenditures that have not come in yet that we're waiting for the invoices. So once we know that we have all the expenditures in, which we would hopefully have them in this month, so that we can have those brought forward for the October meeting of the Canal Days Committee, and then it'll be brought to the council in full report. The municipal performance measures. That is something that is part of the financial information return that the Ministry of Finance requires. When we finish the 2009, that is part of the reporting process that we do those calculations similar to what the region does. Have we in the past compared those to other municipalities? We have years ago. What we found was it was sometimes difficult to determine the comparisons, because each municipality is very different and unique in their own way. For example, we have our own marina, we have our own elevator, we have our beach, we have 2 arenas. Some municipalities our size only have 1 arena. We have an indoor pool. Some municipalities don't have an indoor pool. So when you're comparing some of those items, it's sometimes difficult to compare apples to apples. We have tried in the past, and you have to really talk to the municipalities more so if you're going to look at comparisons. You can do a general comparison in looking at the analysis, and if council's looking for that type of analysis, it is something we could do. And when we finalize the 2010 and the municipal performance measures for 2010, we can look at some municipalities of similar sizes and report on that in comparison for Port Colborne, and we'll look at trying to do something like that. But again, I just have to caution you that it's hard to compare apples to apples, but it is still a comparison.
Thank you, Mr. Sinez. And if I could just make a comment, because I think Councillor Barrett brought up a good point. When you look at policing, for example, in Niagara at $302 per person compared to $271 per person throughout the province of Ontario. Policing in Niagara is much different than other areas throughout the province. We have border issues, both on water as well as border, and unfortunately by default, the regional police tend to be counted upon when those issues do arise. And other issues. When you look at gang activity, look at organized crime, Niagara can be somewhat of an anomaly in comparison to other services. So we always count on our federal colleagues to recognize that and of course compensate us for that, but they haven't yet stepped up to the plate. When we look at water wastewater at 521 throughout Niagara, compared to 490 throughout the province of Ontario, Niagara has a 2-tier water wastewater system. Most municipalities in Ontario have a 1-tier water wastewater system. Hence the reason why the region of Niagara is now embarking on a study to look at 1-tier versus 2-tier to see if in fact it does save us money. So as Peter was alluding to, whether it be municipal or regional, it's very difficult to compare apples to apples, especially with a city like Port Colborne being 18,000 people, having a pool, having a short line railway, owning an elevator, having a marina, 2 arenas, and the list goes on. We employ Gary Makins. I think that's in itself something very special. So, but there are anomalies there, and of course, trying to compare apples to apples can be difficult in terms of the value that we're providing our residents. So, But it's a good point. I'm glad Councillor Barry brought it up regionally, because what we're also looking at the region is that level of service that we're ultimately going to provide the residents. I always look at what Mayor Ford did when he had the 28-hour meeting in Toronto, where he wanted to cut. And I think he heard loud and clear from the residents that no, the value that we're receiving we're quite happy with. So just make it efficient. And so that's an exercise that we're going through regionally. And I think the CAO, actually, Bob, might be a good opportunity for you to speak about the level of service that we're going to be embarking on very shortly, the exercise.
Just quickly, Your Worship, we were going to be getting back, now that the summer's over, I sent to members of council a memo with a whole pile of information and some of the methodology and the thinking that we had pulled together, some of the analysis work that had begun, and we want to now that summer's over, get back at it, and I'm going to be proposing to council perhaps a meeting at least perhaps once a month to start with, on perhaps the third Monday or the first Monday or a day somewhere. I know that everybody's schedule is really crazy. You'll see the note that I sent out that you have over 40 committees and meetings that you go to, and besides council plus your constituency work, and it's really tough to find a time for everybody to fit in here. So I'm going to be discussing it at our directors meeting on Monday, and if any member of council has a date that is just absolutely impossible for you to meet to get back into this again, could you let me know by email? And please don't send Monday to Sunday, because it's we have to do this. If there's a date, a time, or a day that is really difficult for you, we'll try to schedule to fit everybody's schedule in consideration of all of the other committees and other commitments that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. And you recall this came from budget, members of council. This essentially is going to look at what business should we in fact be in. Have we gone too far in some areas? Same as, and Councillor Barrick recognizes at the region, we're doing the same exercise, obviously with a bigger scope, but here municipally, what business should we be in? Have we went astray in certain areas? And with that, it'll be a process of education, so that therefore we, as well as our residents, understand the value that each dollar that they pay for taxes is getting them, and is that worth it? Again, I liken it to the exercise Mayor Ford did in Toronto, and it was a process that I'm sure opened up a lot of eyes in terms of each dollar that was being given to City Hall, and in turn what value they were getting for those dollars. It goes back to the old saying, be careful what you wish for, because if something gets chopped and you're not seeing it anymore, it's gone. So, but on the flip side, where's the fat? Where's the, where can we get leaner? So I think it's going to be a real good exercise. And the gravy, yeah. But we did it back, and I think I see Cease here, our former CAO. I think we did this back in 1998, Cease, and we were able to cut 41% off the operating budget with one fell swoop. So let's do that again and see, Mr. CAO, if we can possibly get to that same number again. But I'm sure it's not all there.
We can, but there'll be a lot of people standing out here talking about no. Mr. Ford situation.
Yes. So, however, I look forward to it. I hope members of council do as well, and we can move forward with the process. Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm on the other side of the coin tonight, and we've heard a lot of requests for different signage, and I've had a couple of people call me and complain about the number of signs. They're a little tired of being signed to death, and I do understand that. But in particular, there is one sign that is causing some concern, and that is located right alongside of the trail, right at the end of Davis Street, right along on the property of the trail. It's a yellow commercial sign, those big movable signs, the lid ones, and it belongs to a local business. People are a little upset by that. They don't think that should be on city property that way. So they would like to have that moved. That just came to me before I came here today. But there is some concern that we're being signed to death, and on top of that, we're in election period. So the signs are out there. There's no question. We've had some people call their local realtors and ask them to move signs because they're blocking driveway sight lines, that sort of thing. I think we just have to be a little more cognizant of what other people need. So, just if you're going to put a sign up for something, be aware that you may be causing a problem for someone else. And if it's not your property, ask permission.
Thank you, Councillor Desmarais. I'm sure staff's going to look into that. Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Demery. Definitely we'll take a look at that. Bylaw enforcement is preparing a report for council's consideration on your sign bylaw. That will be the opportunity to get into more detail as to what type of signage you would like to see across the city. I will then having a subsequent report probably prior to, just dealing with the CIP area of Main Street, council will recall. So that will be coming very soon, and you'll follow up with another report from bylaw enforcement dealing with your overall sign bylaw.
And that's going to include signs on buildings?
That will include everything, Mr. Mayor, pylon signs, portable signs, freestanding signs, third-party signage, the whole gamut.
Signs that cover fronts of buildings?
Everything. Wall signs.
Good.
Everything.
Wonderful. Hallelujah. Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Kenny, just so I'm crystal clear on this at AMO, the time you and Councillor Elliott spent together was also not at the Hilton. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you. I just didn't want to see some mistake get in the paper, and you know what goes after that. You can never get out from underneath it. Anyways, Mr. Mayor, question through you to Mr. Heil. The Oil Mill Creek drain that was scheduled to be cleaned in the springtime, and it was too wet and we couldn't do it. And I see Councillor Butters nodding her head over there, so I think she knows where I'm going on this. And then, lo and behold, they show up, drop off 2 large pieces of equipment to do it, and they've been sitting there for a month and more. You know, I understand part of the thing, that the scouts were in the scout camp, so they couldn't cut through that. And then the horse show had something going on, and they didn't want to mess that up while they were there because it has to go through Centennial Park. But all that has been gone for some time. Certainly the people around there want it done. I think it was supposed to have been done last year, and it's going to get into the rainy season. So I wonder whether you could check and just see what's going on, unless you have some information right now. Thank you.
Mr. Heil.
Worship, the request was in, and I just sent an email today. There's a note from Mr. Benamar that said he's meeting with the contractor the afternoon to go over the details of the excavation portion of the contract with an anticipated start of tomorrow morning, Wednesday at the latest, and that's an update. And thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Heil. Yeah, we had a call from one of the residents, Mr. Anderson, a few days ago, and Henry got right on it, so they should be in there tomorrow morning. Okay, go ahead.
I see Councillor Danch isn't here right now, and he said something about he forgot to feed his horse or something, but so he had to leave. But if he does get back, I wonder if we could ask leave that he gets to read this thing they have coming up on Main Street, and if he doesn't, I'll certainly read it before the end of the meeting.
Great. If you can prompt me to that, Councillor Bodnar, before the end of the meeting, so we don't lose that opportunity.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, I've had some calls with regards to the blasting out of the former Laws Quarry and shake, rattle, and rolling houses along Clarence Street. Just wonder if any complaints have come in to staff with regards to that. And also, at one point there were devices between our municipality and the quarry, because it is in Wainfleet, and it monitored the vibrations from the blasting. Now with the new owner of the quarry, if those are still there, or does the ministry do things like that? But it seems to be in the last short while that the blasts seem to be larger, with more intensity, and one gentleman said he does have a new crack in his basement. He's had some repaired years ago, but it seems to coincide with the recent increase in blasting. I just wonder if staff had any insight on that.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. And if I may, actually the CAO and I spoke about this just the other day. I received a comment from someone and actually felt it at my own home over on Rose. Felt a little shake there. So there's obviously some blasting going on over there, and it's a little bit heavier than it has in the past. I asked Mr. Heil to do some background on it. He has just today sent an email out. Mr. Heil, do you want to comment on that?
Your Worship, we did have a complaint back first part of August from a lady on First and another individual on First Avenue. And I had tried to call, got caught in a telephone loop in Ministry of Natural Resources, their aggregate section. No matter who, you just push this and it takes you here. It says if you push here and it takes you here, then you're back to where you started. And I get pretty frustrated. I actually, Mr. Mayor, called the minister's office, and it was just yesterday that Friday, that the minister's office, that the Guelph office realized that they hadn't responded to me. They called me on Friday. Today, I had a discussion with the aggregates individual, the staff members working on it, and she sent through quick information, and I've sent an email to the mayor, and I'm going to be following up with the individual that had called me, and I can send the email out to other members of council. But I wrote that I had spoke to a chap by the name of Sean Blacklock. He works for Waterford Sand and Gravel, who own La Question, the quarry. They have independent third-party monitoring reports of all blasting at their quarry. He was very quick to say our operations are well within the Ministry of the Environment guidelines, and he's going to email the records to me for the past 2 months, including the standards of the Ministry of Environment. And I will confer with the ministry to make sure that I understand it and will convey that to members of council and those individuals who have also expressed a concern. Also, I said that once we can get those records, it may be a matter of debate with the Ministry of Environment about the standards. I'm not sure. We'll find out. We'll consider our options once we have the information in hand, and I'm going to follow up with the lady that complained. And that was my email today to you, Mr. Mayor. If members of council, I can send that out to you so that you also have it for individuals that may have contacted you. It was very quick, late tonight at 5 o'clock when I spoke to the chap from Waterford, and I got it out because I know that there was an issue there. But I will copy that to all members of council.
Thank you, members of council. And I just forwarded you that email for your information that Mr. Heil had sent to me earlier. Councillor Butters.
Yes, through you to Mr. Heil. You might want to think about asking the owner of that quarry if they're prepared to do something similar to what the Port Colborne quarry will do, which is they will set up monitoring equipment on the land, like the person who's feeling the rumble and the bumble, to get readings from a resident's home. In the Port Colborne quarry, when there are problems like that, they actually will set up a recording device at the home of whoever's reported the difficulty, and that is a really good way to collect additional data.
Thank you, Councillor Butters. Councillor Kenny.
I just want to add to Councillor Butters' comments that was done. The same individual that emailed me, I sent that email off to Mr. Heil, and they put one there. And so if we wanted to get the recordings of that was done last year, we should ask for the recordings from that monitor that they set up. They said they were within ministry standards, but 2 people on First Avenue have complained to me. I keep a documentation of how many times they've called me, so I have that. And I've always told them, if you have that happen, just let me know. So I have that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Kenny. Mr. Heil? That's fine.
Your Worship, I will follow up. I will talk to Waterford again. Again, it was late tonight at 5 o'clock before, and so I'll call him again. I have his email, and I will be following up with respect to, if they're well within ministry standards, there's no reason that they would be concerned about protecting their interests also and following through. It may be an MOE issue that we'll follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Heil. Councillor Steele? That's fine? That's fine. Great, thank you. Councillor Danch.
Thank you so much. As you well know, we've had our little horses growing on Main Street over the last few months, and a little incentive to keep our Main Street alive. We've got a little thing called Feed the Horses on Main Street, and it's through Port Cares, of course. So any of the merchants on Main Street that are showing a little horse around will be accepting food donations, cash donations for Port Cares. It'll be a little mini 2-dayer. It's September 23rd, 24th. Unfortunately, it's not my idea. I have to kind of give this one to Bruce Ferry down at the Thruway, who has Mr. Ed. And if anyone would like to donate to Main Street merchants and our horses, please feel free to do on the 23rd, 24th, or any time before that date. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Danch. And I actually take it a step further. I'd encourage the downtown area of the south end here to jump on board with the whole idea and the move afoot with the horses. It's become a great thing for the municipality. Was that a pun? But to also join in with the program to bring some food over to Port Cares, because we all know they can use it. And of course, the food drive is coming up around November with the Lions Club. So let's start that process now. So Councillor Danch, well done, and to all the Gateway members, well done. And hopefully we can move that that whole concept and that whole drive down here to the South End Business Course. So great job, guys. Any further new business? Councillors' items. I am going to ask Mr. Howell to comment on an issue that was brought to your attention today. There was an email brought to our attention based on a complaint that we received at the ramp at the marina. And I think it should be brought to the public's attention. And I'd like to ask Mr. Howell to comment on it.
Your Worship, I can't mention names because that's contrary to municipal freedom of information and protection of privacy legislation. But there was an individual from the city who attended from a resident in the city,
within the city of Port Colborne.
Yeah, not an employee, no one authorized, and this is quite contrary to law. I think it was a fraud in my view. He attended at our ramp, our access for boats to the lake, and over the weekend demanded at least one payment from an individual, a family that were launching a boat. And he was very impolite, very aggressive, was successful in obtaining $10 from this man and his wife and his 3 children for the launch of a boat. Currently, there is no fee to launch in the weekends or during the week at the boat ramp. There is no charge. Anybody wants to launch a boat, they can do it free of charge. We have contacted the police. They've spoken to the individual who reluctantly, but I understand, if I'm not mistaken, acknowledged that he did that. We will be issuing a letter of no trespass to the individual, be served on him sometime, I suspect, tomorrow. We do not want this individual at our site trying to represent a very illegal and unjust action.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. And with no comment, Councillor Danch.
Sorry, Bob, and is that because of the month of September? Is that why it's a no charge?
Mr. Howell?
Your Worship, it's just been normal that it has not been a charge in September. It's not cost effective. We've always used a security company, and it costs more to run the security company than it does to actually collect the fees. There aren't that many fees some of the weekends, and I understand it's not been cost effective, and it is traditionally what we had done.
Okay. Councillor Botter.
Thank you. Can I ask then, is there a sign stating that at the...
Mr. Howell?
Through you, Your Worship, this just came to light today. Part of our instruction is going to be make a sign and put something up there so that everybody understands and clearly this can't happen again.
Thank you. Thank you, members of council. Members of staff, any updates, anything for you to bring up? Mr. Sinez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have actually 2 items for council and the public. The first one is our 2012 budget. As council has in the past looked to try to speed up our process, we have put together an aggressive schedule for this year's coming budget for 2012. Budget working papers have gone out to the departments as of the beginning of September, with a date of September 23rd to have their budgets back to myself for review with Mr. Heil and the analytical work that has to be done by myself. We've set a date of October 25th that Mr. Heil and I will be meeting with the departments to review their budgets and go through any changes or anything that may come about. And with a tentative date for November 21st, with be the first draft to council for an overall review, and then hopefully in December have a first budget meeting, and then jump into January. So it is an aggressive budget process that we haven't had in the past, but we're looking forward to moving it forward and trying to bring it along a lot quicker. That will also we'll also be including looking at wastewater, water and wastewater budget, also trying to bring that forward a lot sooner, because of the fact also that the region is now looking at their guidelines and trying to bring to the local municipalities what the rates and the fixed charges are going to be at the local level, so that we can do our budgets at the same time. So the region is looking at phasing in over the next couple of years, getting their budgets done quicker, and starting payments instead of starting in March, where the municipality starts for the next year's payments to the region for the treatment. This year, the first payment will be February, and then the following year, January. So we're all getting onto to a calendar year basis there. So that will be coming forward. So we're looking forward to, I guess, a lot of work ahead of us there. The second item that I have is today started, as Regional Councillor Barrick mentioned, today started the regional trips, and I'm going to put on my other hat, from treasurer's hat to the transit hat, is we have the link from Port Colborne to Welland. As you know, we had 3 trips a day, which the city is funding through our own budget. With the regional transit now coming on board, using the same bus system, the region is paying for an additional 3 trips a day. So basically we have a morning trip, an afternoon, and an evening trip. Now there'll be 2 morning trips, 2 afternoon trips, and 2 evening trips. So for example, our normal trips was 7:25 to 8:30. The second trip will start at 8:35 to 9:40, and it'll be similar for the afternoon and similar for the evening. So the evening is actually the last trip coming into Port Colborne will be at 7 o'clock. In addition to that, all 6 trips are also going to be provided on the Saturday, and again, regionally funded. So that will get people from Port Colborne to Welland on the Saturdays also. The regionally funded trips gets people from Port Colborne to Welland, or Welland to Port Colborne. What it also does is it gets people to Welland that can get onto the intermunicipal transit system, which is the triangle system between Welland, St. Catharines, and Niagara Falls. So essentially you can go from Port Colborne to Fort Erie through that system if you wanted to. Fort Erie or Port Colborne to Welland, you can go to Niagara Falls, you can go to St. Catharines, or you can go to Niagara Falls and then on to Fort Erie, because there's a Fort Erie link from Niagara Falls. So that whole system is in place starting today. The regional system is a pilot project at this point in time. They are going to review it after 6 months. The fares, I have to say, is a little different. Right now, our fare is $3.50. The region has agreed that the regional trips is going to be $3.50 also. And the overall intermunicipal transit, if you want to go from Port Colborne and get a transfer in Welland to get onto the intermunicipal transit bus to go to Niagara Falls or St. Catharines, that overall trip is $5. So, and you would have to, the residents would have to, when they get on the bus, tell them what their destination is. If they're going to go on to the intermunicipal transit system, start in Welland, once they get to Welland, they have to let the bus driver know here, and it's $5. The regional systems, again, is a cash system at this point in time. So it's $3.50 cash to go from Port Colborne to Welland or back. If you want to get onto the intermunicipal system to go further than Welland, then it's $5 cash. There are no monthly passes at this point in time, and there's no, and actually the U-Pass, which is the University College Pass, is not accepted on the regional bus at this time, until they can work out some details with the schools. What else? The region has a website, and so if anybody's looking for additional information, trip information, and so on, then we advise you to go onto the regional website, and there's additional information there with regard to the whole intermunicipal transit system. But as far as that, Mr. Mayor, the Welland and the link, we've increased the service, and it started today. The last item is unfortunately we don't have, and I think people need to know this, is that we don't have the community bus operating on Saturday, so people would have to actually get to City Hall as the starting point if they want to go to Welland on the Saturday trips. And then I'm sure the Transit Advisory Committee will be looking at Saturday type service and bringing something to council for 2012, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Sinez. And I have to say, as co-chairman of the Transportation Committee at the region, it's about time. We've been working on this for quite some time, and to have the opportunity to implement it here in Niagara is actually exciting. We now have an intermunicipal transit system. Peter had mentioned, just for you folks, for information, we currently have a triangle. That's Welland. You're going to hear this a lot. The triangle is Niagara Falls, Welland, St. Catharines. And fortunately, we have our system, and Fort Erie has a system as well, which are referred to as the feeders. So basically, the feeders will feed into the triangle, which now you'll have the opportunity, whether it's health, a destination for health-related activities, whether it's jobs, whether it's shopping, whether it's tourism, people coming in and going out, well, it'll be a lot easier to move around the region a lot more freely. I think what has to be recognized here as well is GO Transit. Is now people are going to get off the GO train, okay, and not have to call a cab to go somewhere in Niagara. We've actually hit the 2011, being stuck in the 1950s for the last many decades. We now have the opportunity to now get off the GO train and go wherever you want throughout the entire region, not just those areas that may have transit attached to them. So I think it's great news. I have to thank Councillor Barrick as well. I know, David, you worked extremely hard on this as well, and Councillor Bodner as well, who are both on the Transportation Committee. Kudos to you two fellows as well for working extremely hard to finally get this in place. And hopefully beyond the pilot project, it'll be the norm, it'll be normal, and those levels of service can elevate like other regions throughout the province of Ontario. So it's great news. Going back to budget, Peter, your timing in terms of having some budget papers to council?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, we're looking at having draft budget with council, a council meeting November 21st. So we'll try to get them obviously out to you a little sooner than that. Departments we're going to be meeting October 25th. That's our tentative date, unless something vastly goes wrong that we don't have all the information together. But those are the dates that we're trying to meet.
Great, thanks, Peter. And the reason why I bring that up, members of council, is because what we're going to be looking for when those papers get on your hands is guidance. We want to ensure that you give staff guidance. And I think, Councillor Elliott, you touched on it earlier about receiving the 2010 financials, and even for that matter, the Canal Days financials. We're going to be looking at council to give guidance for the budget. If there's things that you want to change, if there are services that you want to either enhance or go the other way and cut, staff is going to need that guidance to then therefore come back with a budget that you expect. So whether it's going towards an enhancement or whether it's going toward a cut, it's your call. And staff is going to take that guidance and go back and come up with those numbers. So I'm glad to hear that we're going to have that in council's hands by late October, November, so that therefore we can start that process of giving staff the guidance to come back with the realities of what that level of service in fact is going to be. Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to actually speak to the transit issues again. I think it's a great, actually a great program that's laid out right now, but it would be very helpful if we had readily available here to all the residents of Port Colborne the various bus schedules of the other cities, because you need to be able to sit down and plan what you're going to do. Many times you're going to take this loop to the other city and do something within that city in their transit system. So if we had those available, that would be great.
They're available on the regional website?
No, but I mean...
And we can bring them here, and we can put them in hard copy as well.
That's what I mean, yeah,
Great.
for everybody to just be able to pick up.
Mr. Sinez?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe that the region, along with the 3 municipalities that operate transits, that they, if I'm not mistaken, they're already done, they're already in print. So I will check to see getting some of those copies and having them here too. We have posted it on our in our lobby, our schedule, and we'll provide that. Try to get that information and have it available.
Peter, what we want to do is maybe want to get a hold of Kumar at the region. He has them. He can give it to you electronically, as well as we can print out some hard copies and put them in our lobby. And put them on our website.
Yeah.
Okay? Thank you, Councilor Desmarais. It's a great point. Any further comments, questions? Gary, do you want to mention something about the EOI? And I'm going to come back to Dan.
Through Mr. Mayor, the Community Services Department sent out an expression of interest to 14 different companies to see who might be interested in partnering with the City of Port Colborne to provide programs and services for mainly the Health and Wellness Center, but also any other city facilities that might look at enhanced services, whatever. So the expression of interest closes tomorrow, September 13th at 2 p.m. And I believe members of council have been invited for the opening of the EOI, so we're anxious to wait to see how many different people would like to partner with us and what they can offer.
Thank you, Mr. Makins. With no questions, Mr. Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a reminder, this Thursday from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. is the open house for the Market Square and King George Park design options as part of the CIP. So there'll be a questionnaire, and all the design options will be before the members of the public that do wish to come and attend. So just a reminder to those out in Cogeco land that haven't seen the notice that it is this Thursday.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina, and members of council will recognize, but for those members out on Cogeco watching, it's going to be a busy year. Entering into budget, it's I can read your mind, Mr. Heil. It's going to be a busy year. Dan, I tell you, your office, you can't see Dan when you walk into his office because all you see is paper. And he's in there somewhere. But with the downtown CIP, the community improvement plan, the waterfront community improvement plan, the brownfield community improvement plan, as well as the Market Square now, a lot going on, and also entering into budget. Pardon me? The official plan. Yeah, the official plan that the region is now entertaining. So it's a busy time, a lot going on in terms of preparing for budget. But again, why staff needs that guidance. Because with all these things that are going on, comes a dollar amount to satisfy the recommendations that are contained within these reports. So very important that we have all this done in tandem together, so that therefore we can give staff proper guidance to either proceed or not proceed. Any further updates? I can see Ron hiding behind his monitor there. You already have your wish list, don't you? 2 weeks to prepare. Members of council, we're now going to move on to the next part of the agenda. We have the adoption of the minutes of the 21st meeting regular of Committee of the Whole, dated August 22nd, 2011. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Desmarais, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. We're now going to move on to the items requiring separate discussion. We're going to start off with item 3. Councillor Danch.
Sorry, I'll pull that. I'm okay with that issue. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, if you can move that, Councillor, because it has been lifted. So if you can at least move it, we can get it back on the table.
Okay, then, as you said, then go right ahead.
Okay, so.
Oh, you want me to? Okay, you want me to read it? Fine. All right. Okay. So, Department of Community and Corporate Services Division Report Number 2011-38, subject Sugarloaf Marina Customer Service Rebate. The Department of Community and Corporate Service Division Report Number 2011-38, subject Sugarloaf Marina Customer Service Rebate, be approved, recommending that the Council of the City of Port Colborne receive the report for information.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder to that motion, please? Councillor Elliott, are there any questions or comments to that motion? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you, Councillor Danch. Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I only lifted this one because I think on line 4 of the description, it's a mistake in spelling. I don't think it should be telephony. It should perhaps just be telephone, and that is the only reason I lifted it.
So we'll make sure that's corrected, Mr. Sinez.
Is it
that right?
telephone?
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That is the correct spelling of it. They do call it a telephony system. I didn't like it, but it's there, and that's what it is. It's kind of weird. Yeah.
There you go. So, Councillor, that's the only reason why I understand that's the only reason why you're lifting it. Are there any questions to this motion? Although it was a quick one, Councillor, it's going to take you a bit longer to actually read the motion and get it on the table, so I have to ask you to do that. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. That Development of Community and Corporate Services Division, Report number 2011-39, subject supply and install a telephony system. It's too funny. At City Hall with connectivity to the Roseland Center and Fire Hall be approved, recommending A, that the Council of the City of Port Colborne award the request for proposal for the telephone system to Activo for the base system plus the optional additions included in this report for a total cost of $65,426. B, that the additional funding required to complete the project of approximately $41,578 come from within the City Hall improvements budget of $662,855 as shown on the attached schedule. C, that the Council of the City of Port Colborne enter into an agreement with NRBN to supply and install fiber optic broadband to the Roseland Center and the Fire Hall to be funded through the monthly telephone charges savings. D, that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to execute the appropriate agreements.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Elliott? Are there any questions or comments to that? The only comment I wanted to make is with the current system right now, and I'm going to ask Mr. Howell to comment on this. You all know how my patience is, and sometimes, and when I get, and I'm out and about, whether it's at the region or wherever I am, and I call back to City Hall, and I've heard some of this from the public as well. You get very impatient with the voicemail system that we have, and I understand, and this is no slam at staff by no means. Is it a slight to staff? Because I know how busy you are. But to get voicemail after voicemail after voicemail after voicemail gets a bit, yeah, it gets frustrating, to say the least. So Mr. Howell and I were talking the other day about how we can eliminate that. If somebody's going to call in, and voicemail does help, but if somebody wants to speak to a live person, how can we do that? And we want to get to that solution. So Mr. Howell, I'll allow you the opportunity to tell people here, especially on Cogeco, what you told me.
Your Worship, we have 11 lines into City Hall, and if someone's on the phone, if they don't get a busy signal, they go to voicemail. And the other day when you called, Mr. Mayor, exhibiting your patience, it was very clear. It was very clear. I noticed there were 9 lines that were lit up most of the time in the morning, and I can understand how patient you were. As well as some others. And taxpayers do call, unfortunately, but there's so many lines lit up. You know, the comment was made, Your Worship, that we're busy, and we are busy, and everybody here is working towards good public relations and trying to make sure that people's calls and their requests for information or their concerns are received and dealt with within 24 hours. Currently, we've issued a 5C service, 5C being citizens and customers, constituents, council, and co-workers, that we are within 24 hours trying to get back. Everybody's doing that. What we were working out right now, because the new telephony system will in fact pick up one number. You call 835-2900, a live person will answer the phone, and that person will hopefully, in our system, we're going to look at checking to make sure that they're not dumping a call someplace into a voicemail, or at least trying to understand. Right now, we've got a fairly good system where the switchboard understands where people are away, but you know, when the line's busy, there's an automatic, it takes you to voicemail. We're going to see what we can do to perhaps default it back to another individual that says, sorry, you know, like somebody, so-and-so's tied up, and I'm going to take a message and you're going to talk to a live person. We will talk about that as a procedure. I know that a lot of places that you call and say press 1 for English and après le 2 for French, and it goes on, and by the time you get finished pushing numbers, you really don't, you forgot what you're there for. At this point, this CAO is not going to agree to go to that unless direction from council. We're going to stay with a live person on the telephone so that you're greeted with somebody, if at all possible, for all purposes. And all the phone will come to 835-2900. That'll be City of Port Colborne. Now, it doesn't make it easy because even switchboard with 15 lines or 18 lines is going to have fun trying to keep up to phone calls coming in. It is inevitable that some may go to voicemail. We're going to try to keep away from that as much as possible. The fact is that the staff of the City of Port Colborne are here for to service the City Council and to make sure that the services that Council directs are administered efficiently and effectively, and to treat the people and the citizens of the city with the utmost of respect. We're all working towards that. Part of it is really good and very good telephony habits. And right now we're pretty good. We're not perfect. We are pretty good. It's better than a lot of other municipalities and businesses. We're going to see if we can't even make it better. It will take a little trial and error, I'm sure, but with the new system and the opportunities, right now our old system is just short of a crank. We can, for example, call forward to voicemail or call forward to our handheld telephones so that any of the managers or people who are going to be away for a bit can receive phone calls on the road and all kinds of things. We're into hands-free. The world of technology really, now we're moving up into 2011 instead of our 1985 system. It's going to be much more advantageous and easier for the staff to be able to respond directly, more efficiently, and quickly without going to voicemail.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. Well stated. Members of Council, any further questions or comments to the report? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. We'll now move on to item 5. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That Department of Community and Corporate Services Division, report number 2011-40, subject Employee Group Benefits Consultant, be approved, recommending that the Council of the City of Port Colborne award the proposal for employee benefit consulting services to McAvoy, Beelan, and Campbell for the years 2012 to 2015 inclusive.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder to that report, please? Councillor Desmarais, questions or comments? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of comments on the report. I read it once and I read it twice, and I go back and read it again, and I take issue with the paragraph on the page 22 of our package that says the current employee group benefit provider is McAvoy, Beelan, and Campbell, who has provided this service for at least the last 25 to 30 years with extreme knowledge of all the city benefit plans. Although McAvoy, Beelan, and Campbell is not the low bidder in this case, they have provided a commitment through their proposal to continue to support the City of Port Colborne with the following. And I list 3 items on what they support. I take it that this was included with their proposal to the city as their part of their bid. I guess my problem with that is it appears that they're saying that here's my bid, look at what else I do for the city, please accept my bid because of what else I do. I guess what I have an issue with is, were the other 3 companies that are listed, did they have the same opportunity to put forth a commitment to the city for any sponsorships? It says in the third paragraph that although they're only $1,000 greater than the low proposal, the $7,500 has not increased for the last 5 years. But when you take a look at the proposal from number 3 on the list, their proposal doesn't change price for 4 years. And I guess I'm wondering why we are accepting a proposal that's $1,000 more than the low bidder. When if you turn back to the item previous to this, we're talking about the telephony system, we accepted a bid that was $700 less for an item that was, I believe, $54,000, $54,500. So the $700,000 as a percentage is a heck of a lot smaller than the $1,000 in what we're talking about here. In my mind, I read this over and I thought, why are we accepting this? Why was this included in the proposal to city? I don't think I've ever seen anything in the year that we've been here that a proposal has included this, and look what I do for the city. I fully understand McAvoy, Beelan, and Campbell is a long-time company in town. Historically, they've been here for a very long time. Reputable company, I have no issue with them. The problem is the way that their proposal was worded and put to council. We say that we're going to accept the bid that's $1,000 more because they have knowledge of the Port Colborne Employee Group benefit plan and a combination annual support of funding of Canal Days and Health and Wellness Center commitment. Net cost to the city is very minimal. Well, if we go back to the other three groups, will they propose a commitment to the city as well in order for their bid to be accepted? This just, to me, seems like it's going to corrupt the process. If we want to accept a bid that's $1,000 greater because it's a local company with local connections to the city, I have no problem with that. I, for one, would stand here and say, I will take a bid that's greater from a local company if it's going to be $1,000 or less to employ people in this city, to give them the work. I've got no problem with that. The problem that I have is the wording that says, well, because we do these three things for you, please accept my bid. That doesn't sit well with me. I had an issue with that. When we opened up their bid and we saw that, either we should have tossed the bid aside because it was with prejudice, because they're leaning on what they've done. Staff has said in the first part of the report that they opened up all four of the bids. They were all checked, found complete, they were all competent, everybody was good to go, they all qualified, and yet we come down to these two issues. And I just have a problem with awarding a contract to somebody that's not the low bid when it has been basically our policy to accept the low bid. I have an issue with this. I don't like to see that paragraph in there with we're going to sponsor. It says a 5-year, $10,000 sponsorship package for the new Zamboni at the Health and Wellness Center. I didn't know we tendered that out yet. So how somebody can state that, I don't know. Maybe one of those other three companies would come on for $20,000 sponsorship. So those are the issues that I have with that. I just think this puts us in a bad position moving forward with other bids that we have to accept.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Are there any further questions or comments? Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would agree that the way it's laid out, it is in poor taste. But I wouldn't presume that the company put forward the fact that they give us this added value. Was this just, I'm assuming that this was just added to the report by staff so that the council would have this information?
Mr. Sinez?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the part of it was all brought forward for information for council. Was it part of the proposal that was provided to staff with regard to the tender? It was part of that. It was stating that they would continue to be part of the Canal Days and the contributions toward Canal Days, and also they were interested in the fact of proposing a sponsorship towards the Health and Wellness Center for the community. The overall analysis of the bids looks at local, being a local company for Port Colborne, looks at experience, looks at the experience with the city as a whole, and the continued support for the city, and in addition to the knowledge level of our plans, current plans, takes all that into consideration, and then in addition to that was so I guess the analysis of the additional funding that they would put towards the city as being one of the local contractors or tenders with the overall proposal. So it was part of what we received, but it's not the only thing that would have been looked at with regard to it. It obviously provides benefit to the city overall, no question about that, but it also looked at the local aspect of it, the experience, and the longevity of the company with the city.
Thank you, Mr. Sinez. Further questions? Councillor Kenny.
Mr. Sinez, can you tell me where the third bidder like on the list that we give them, where they're from. That.
Mr. Sinez?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that company is out of Welland.
Councilor?
That's what I want to know. Thanks.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Councilor Elliott?
Thank you. Just a further comment to what Mr. Sinez had said. We're counting on experience. Local business people know the city. I got no problem with that. I mean, I'll be the first one to say again that, you know what, we're going to hire people and we're going to contract people that are in town that are putting our residents to work. But we've got to be consistent. If we're going to do that here, are we going to look at this going forward? Is this going to be a slippery slope we're going down where, you know, are we going to weed out and take into account how does the bidder fit in with the city? Are they local people? Do they have local knowledge? Do they hire local people? You know, or are we just looking at bottom line? Because in fact, we're spending taxpayer dollars and we're accountable to them. You know, here, it's only $1,000. It's $1,000 a year for 4 years. It, you know, works out to, you know, $5,000 over the 4 years. Minimal cost to have it as an in-town business. I got no problem with that. But if we're making the decision to do that now, we better be ready to make a decision going forward that if we've got businesses that put forth bids that are $1,000 or less under, you know, the lowest bid, maybe we should make it a policy that we take into account that and what it benefits the city. Because if we're going to take this one, this is the first, and we should make it a policy to have a look at what we're going to gain by hiring and employing the people of this city to do work for the city.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further questions or comments? I'll thank you, and Peter, I thank you. I think what this really encourages is that when companies are making bids, that they in fact added value to their bids. And of course, at the end of the day, I know what I would do as a business person is look at the bottom line. And the bottom line here shows a net gain to the taxpayer, not a loss. So I congratulate you for that. Members, any further comments or questions? Councillor Bodnar.
Mr. Mayor, I think I agree with you on that statement you made, but I also would like to see then every company told that. You know, you can't have one that knows it and the others don't. That just doesn't seem right at all. And so I guess I agree with Councillor Elliott on some of this, that the perception of this is that, you know, these other guys somehow were at a disadvantage in bringing forward their bids because they didn't know maybe they should have sponsored other things. So it just, you know, I don't know, maybe they did.
You're darn right they did.
But I'm just
Welcome to the
thinking
world of
that if
business.
we didn't state that, it doesn't sit very well.
It's as I stated. It's. I know it's something I do in my company every day. It's business. You always try to add value to the bottom line. You have a bid and you add value to it. And I think for the most part, that's just a sign of the times in terms of doing business. I would congratulate the company for just doing that because, as I said, to the taxpayer, it's a net gain, not a loss. Mr. Sinez?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. The overall concept is, you know, we put this out to a proposal, and this is part of the proposal that you look at. It's not the only part that you look at. You know, you do look at experience. You do look at the benefit of being local. So there's different components of looking at the overall proposal, and this is one part of the proposal.
Thank you. Okay, with no further questions or comments, Councillor Butters, go ahead.
I have one question. When you talk about the proposal that goes out to the companies, is it suggested in the proposal to the companies about the added value aspect of what they will put in, or is the proposal silent on that?
Mr. Sinez?
No, there never is a fact of added value.
Okay, so that each company would
each company has, you know, it's up to them whether or not
they take that
whether or not
initiative
they
or not.
take that for themselves or not.
Exactly. Councillor Demery?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I can support this because it is a local company. And I would suggest that we change the process by which we invite bids and put something in there to indicate that we would entertain added value?
I personally think it goes without saying in business, again, I think for the most part, if you're astute, you're going to do everything you can to get a contract. And if in fact that includes added value to your bid, then by all means, that would be their own initiative. I do it. I'm sure other businesses do it as well in terms of trying to add value to the bottom line, because quotes are quotes. But again, you would expect it would be part of part of their initiative, as Councillor Butters put it. So, members of council, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I take issue with that. I mean, you're basically putting out a bid that says, here's the scope of the work you're supposed to do, give me your bottom line. Not give me your bottom line and what are you going to do for me after? I mean, when you're asking for a bid for something, give me the bid on the job quoted. Not a bid on the job quoted and I'm going to kick you back $5,000 over here. That's, I mean, if you put that on bids, now you got a bid for the job and now you got to give me something else on the side. You can put a value add on work that's being done. You know what, in the scope of things, I'll give you 3 roadways and I'll throw in a couple of gutters and a couple of manholes and you know what, we're good to go because you got something. But you show me in this term of council when one bid has come back and has, here's my bid and this is what I'm going to do for you too because you accepted my bid. This is what I've done for you. I've never seen that. This is the first time ever. And since I've sat in this chair, I've never seen a bid, and we get bids all the time. And I've even asked different staff members, why are we taking the low bid when everything's come in under budget, all the bids? Why are we not taking something higher? So I think we ought to get it out that when you're bidding on a contract, you bid on the contract, and that's how we award it, the low bid.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Butters.
You keep going back to the low bid, but could somebody just remind me the policy, isn't part of that policy that it is actually not the low bid, that we retain that right to not accept the lowest bid?
Mr. Sinez.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Through the purchasing policy, it's and in any bid that we or proposal that we do put out, we always put in there that it's not always the lowest bid that would get the proposal. You look at the overall concept of what you're looking for, whether or not you allocate points or a certain percentage, whatever, of whether it's local, the experience they're bringing in, the knowledge level, the company and their principles and the experience that they're bringing in. Obviously longevity of being in business, and other references, other companies that they may provide their services to, and how far they go out. So it's that whole process that's looked at, and a lot of times the lowest bid may not always be the most efficient or most effective bid. And you're looking at what you want to bring in as a city, but ultimately it becomes council's decision as to which way we go.
Good, and I just wanted to add some clarification. First off, McAvoy Bellin is a local company. Bob Ferrara actually lives in Port Colborne too. Although his company might be located in Welland, Mr. Ferrara does live in Port Colborne. But again, I think everyone's made their comments, and I'll leave it at that for now. Members of council, any further questions or comments? All those in favor? All those in favor, get the hands up, guys. Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you. Item 6, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That Department of Chief Administrative Officers, Special Projects and Corporate Strategic Initiatives, report number 2011-6. Subject, a report to obtain council approval to issue an RFP for P3 operations of all aspects of Sugarloaf Marina, including those currently provided by a P3 provider, Marlon Marine, be approved, recommending. Council approved staff issuance of RFP calls as directed from the August 8, 2011 in-camera meeting, and which were confirmed at its August 22nd, 2011 council meeting as follows. A, issuance of a request for proposals for the operations of the Sugarloaf Marina Complex. B, issuance of a request for proposals separating the various individual components of the Sugarloaf Marina operations. And C, negotiation of a possible one-year extension with Marlon Marina, Inc., incorporating any improvements deemed appropriate, and further, that if the negotiation of a one-year extension with Marlon Marine, Inc. is not successful, that the city issue an RFP call for a one-year provision of those services currently supplied by Marlon Marine, Inc.
Do we have a second to that, please? Councillor Kenny. Questions or comments? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one comment. With regards to item B, issuance of a request for proposals separating the various individual components of the Sugarloaf Marina operations. I don't even think that we had a discussion of what the separate and individual components are. How are we going to split it up? How are we going to ask for a RFP when we haven't even discussed what they are? And maybe we should have the discussion first, is the complex as a whole greater in value than the individual components? I'd almost like to see item B removed from the RFP and just put the RFP out for the operation of the marina complex as a whole. My thought being that if we put it out as individual components, if the people skim off the top grossing parts of it in the beginning, we're left over with maybe parts that don't make any revenue, don't generate revenue. And then what do we do with them? You're left with maybe parts that you can't get anybody to bid on, and we may have to run one or two parts of the marina itself. I just have an issue with that. I just wanted to make those comments. I'd just like to hear comments from other council members. I just think that the marina as a whole, if we're going to go to RFP, issue the whole thing and not piece by piece.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to Councillor Elliott's comments. Obviously, this approval tonight would only have the RFP drafted, and you would obviously, as a council, then have to approve the actual drafted RFP, including those components that you're talking about, what is in a component and what isn't, what the individual components are. So this does not approve anything tonight other than doing the work, getting the RFP out. With respect to the evaluation process, again, I don't think, certainly I would recommend the council to approve something that wasn't in the best interest of the community of Port Colborne. So if a RFP comes in that says, here's the full operation, and that's compared then to somebody trying to piecemeal, as you said, certainly I think we would very quickly say, I'm sorry, we're not doing it that way. We want the best possible deal for the taxpayers if we're going to privatize these operations completely at the Marlon Marina. And that's the reason why it's broken into those components. It's not meant to get council approval tonight to do a specific component. It's meant to get council permission tonight to actually draft the RFP, present it back to council and say, here's the document. Now, do you want to make changes in it?
Thank you, Mr. Vincent. Further questions or comments? I have Councillor Bodner and Danch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Vincent. The way this stands, will that not get what Councillor Elliott wants? Somebody could bid on the whole thing. Also, people could bid on parts. And so we could then make the decision after.
Mr. Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Councillor Bodner, in fact, that's what I was trying to say, and I apologize I wasn't clear enough. But obviously, the ideal situation, in my opinion, would be if we're going to go to a P3 operation, that it was for the full operation. That may not be, though, in the private sector's best interest. They may feel that they don't want to be involved in operating the public ramp, as an example. They may not want to be operating winter storage. They may say, no, I don't want those components. The city may then have somebody else, local marine industry, bid on that and say, this, we're prepared to take over that, and here's a price. At the end of the day, though, the evaluation will have to be done on the best financial return for the city, still maintaining the service. And there's another component here which is not completely identified, and that is the ongoing maintenance of the marina property. Right now, as you know, that's an annual budget issue that staff would bring up and say, we need money for this dock or so on. But one of the components that will be in the RFP is, how do you propose to do that, Mr. P3 bidder? How do you propose to provide that maintenance of the city's property? And so all those items individually would have to be evaluated, and council would have to make a final decision on what's in the best interest of the city. It may be status quo. It may be that you say, no, we're not changing anything. We're going to keep, as we've done this past year, the majority of the operations done by city and city staff. The balance, a private sector operator operating within the marina complex. So those are all options still on the table.
Thank you, Mr. Vincent. Councillor Danch?
You know, we keep on picking on Marlin Marina and blaming them for the problems that we've had. I mean, the city's had years to try and manage this marina, and it just seems like we're constantly picking on Marlins, and you want to give them another one-year extension. So you're telling me that you're going to let this guy eat for another year, but then maybe you're going to be gone? I've talked to those guys. They really just want direction as far as what the city's going to do with this marina. Like, if they're staying, then they want to stay. If they're out, let them go.
Mr. Vincent?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the Councillor Danch, I certainly have made no negative comments about Marlin Marina, neither does this report. I don't know who's making negative comments. Marlin was the original lessee from the city of this property for some 25 years, and the arrangements and the relationship between the city and Marlin were set in stone. They were set in stone by those leases between the federal government, the city and Marlin Marine. It's only in the last 2 years that the city's had the ability to, in fact, consolidate the marina. Part of that consolidation was to go back to the private sector and say, does somebody want to run a service similar to Marlin? And Marlin bid on it. They weren't the low bidder, but the council selected them for exactly that reason. They wanted to provide these people with an opportunity to stay in business. They can bid on a full-service marina. And if they're the successful bidder, they will certainly, I think, council will award it to them. But, you know, I cannot support the suggestion that somehow or other we've done anything incorrect to Marlin. That's not factually correct.
Further questions or comments, members of council? Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would hope that, that anybody that has an interest in bidding when we go to RFP bids. I mean, it's open to everybody, and I don't think we're going to preclude any pre-existing, businesses that are in town or anything like that. Everybody is fair game to put a bid in. I also think we have to keep in mind too, when we put the RFP out, we have to have a sense of what are we going to do with our waterfront? What are we going to do with our marina? Who's going to come and run it if we decide that somebody's going to bid on it, or if we're just going to stay the status quo and we're going to keep it? I mean, what's a vision for the waterfront down there for H.H. Knoll? I think we have to keep that in mind too when we're drafting the RFP. That if we do have a third party come in to run it, are we going to make any improvements along the waterfront? Can we work in concert with whoever we have come in and pick up the contract? I think to me it's kind of a wasting asset down there. The waterfront, the park itself, the marina. There's so much more that we can do. That if we had a plan of where we're going to go with the waterfront, maybe it would partner in with the RFP that we're going to put out. But I think we really have to sit down and we have to take a look at what's our goal for down at the park? What's our goal for that whole area? Are we satisfied with what it is, or would we like to see it be improved? And what improvements are we going to make? And how does that impact the RFP that we put out, and who's going to bid on it? So I think we've got a lot of work to do on this before we go out with that.
Thank you, Councillor. Further questions or comments? If I may, members of council, I think Councillor Elliott brings up a great point. And I think this report does just exactly what you're actually trying to initiate here. I think this process will initiate that dialogue, not here just within council, but it encourages the private sector to come on board and give us those very ideas. I think what Mr. Vincent has stated earlier is that this is going to begin a process, and the intent is to receive guidance, once again, from council, guidance from the private sector. The bottom line, folks, is that, the intent of council, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I'm sure your intent is to a net benefit for the taxpayers, to ensure that their ROI, their return on their investment, is greater than today or tomorrow than it is today. And with that, that's what this report is going to try to articulate, so that, as well as a level of service, can bring back that return to the taxpayers. But I have to state one thing, and I'm not trying to be facetious here, based on the report we just talked about earlier. But it also has to include added value. The private sector And I think, Councillor Elliott, you brought the point up. You just brought it up in terms of what more can the private sector bring to the table in this process. Can they bring further opportunities to the waterfront? Can they bring further opportunities to the marina grounds itself? Can they bring further opportunities with respect to enhancing the level of service? Let's face it, at the end of the day, all we did was rent slips. That's all we did. Now we rent slips, we're full service, we're selling gas, we're doing pump outs, but what else can we do? And granted, it's going to be within this process and what Mr. Vincent brings back, an opportunity for us to work with the private sector to in fact be more than we are now, with the intent to give more back to the taxpayer in terms of a net gain and a level of service that we can expect to offer both the residents as well as the customers at Sugarloaf. So actually, this is an exciting time, and I'm looking forward to seeing that report back from staff. Further questions or comments? Councillor Bodner?
Just a comment. I can't remember. Did somebody pull number 7, or did we already pass that?
It's approved.
It's approved. Okay,
Yeah.
so just for the public, that, because we're talking about the marina.
Sure.
An RFP is also going out for the restaurant at Sugarloaf Harbor Marina. So if someone didn't pick up on that, because we just did it in block,
Right.
that's part of the process also.
Mr. Howe?
Just quickly to that, too, Your Worship. Just a reminder that the current restaurant operator requested a release from the lease. The amount of money that they were paying was established by the restaurateur as a part of his request to operate the restaurant. And he has actually requested a release, and council has agreed to a release, and we're working out the details right now with him. And his restaurant officially closes on, as I understand it, September the 23rd for public, and he's open right now Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I believe Sunday. But at his request, they want to close and leave the business.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. Further questions or comment to the question? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried unanimously. Thank you. Was that unanimous? Everybody carried that? Yeah, great. Okay, good. Thought I seen all the hands go up. You guys are too quick for me. Okay, we'll now move on to item 10. Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the email correspondence dated August 3rd, 2011, received from Renton Bond, Silver Bay Road speed limit, be referred to the Engineering and Operations Department for a staff report.
Thank you, Councillor Bodner. Have a seconder to that, please. Councillor Butters, questions or comments? Councillor Bodner.
I pulled that because Mr. Bond thought he might be here tonight to speak on this, but I don't see him, so I guess staff, if we pass this, will do that report. And certainly while I agree with some things in Mr. Bond's email, there's others that I don't, so I'll put my 2 cents into staff when before they do the report.
Thank you, Councillor Bodner. Ms. Grigg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct. Mr. Bond is not in attendance this evening. He called me earlier today and indicated that he would be not be in attendance, so you're correct.
Thank you, Mrs. Gregg. Further questions or comments to this report, members of council? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. That will exhaust the reports to be discussed this evening. Again, no pun intended. And with that, I'll ask for, is there any more notices of motion this evening? Members? Notice of motion? Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I intend to bring forward a motion for the September 26th meeting regarding the Port Cares Capital Campaign, and a recommendation that we support that campaign additionally, and a method to do so. That method would not affect the tax levy nor jeopardize any of the current projects.
Thank you. If we can have it distributed to the clerk and ready for the council packages by the next meeting, that would be great. Thank you, Councillor Butters. Any further notices of motion? Members of council, with that, I am going to ask for a motion to adjourn, and then we're going to go to the council meeting, but I want to do this in this meeting. As you folks know, this Sunday is a very special day. And the next meeting, you see me, I'll look a bit different. to say the very least. To say the very least. So before I adjourn this meeting, I am going to publicly offer a challenge to each and one of you. Look at Elliot. Look at Elliot around the room. for you folks to stand right next to me and as well do the same thing. So I'm going to offer that challenge to you. I think it would, nothing would look better than to have this, and I'm not going to put any pressure on you because I don't think it's fair, but nothing would look better than if this whole council was sitting here looking the same in support of the Terry Fox run. So I'll leave that for you for food for thought, but no pressure. Councillor Bodner.
Where do you want us?
Mr. Mayor, I think I can speak on behalf of all of the council when I say I think your head's big enough for all of us.
Only from you, Ron. Only from you. But as I said, members of the council, by all means, you're more than welcome to come on out and join me. But if not, at least come on out and take part in the event. By all means, it's a great event, and hopefully we can raise more money than ever to bring to the Terry Fox Run, to Nancy and all those folks that work extremely hard to raise money for cancer research. So by all means, come on out and enjoy the event. And yes, I am. Actually, I am. So you can either go online or I can take them. Yeah. So by all means, come on out and take part in the event, and let's raise some money for cancer research. So with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Steele, Councillor Desmarais, all those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. We'll now move on to the council portion of the agenda. Madam Clerk, any addendum items?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there are two. The addition of item 17, Historical Marine Museum Report 2011-13. This is regarding the Enabling Accessibility Fund grant and request for proposal for the museum. And as well, there's a bylaw rising out of this item, bylaw 5692-12311, and the confirmatory bylaw has been renumbered to suit.
Thank you, Ashley. Members of council, mover and seconder for the agenda, please. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Danch, any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. I'll now move on to disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures? With none, I will now move on to adoption of the minutes. I have one set of minutes, which are the minutes of the 30th meeting regular of council, dated August 22nd, 2011. Members, mover and seconder, please. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Steele, any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Are there any items requiring a separate discussion? Mover and seconder for the items, please. Councillor Steele, Councillor Desmarais. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Members, I have two proclamations I'll be looking for a mover and seconder for. The first proclamation is Child Care Worker and Early Childhood Educator Day. That whereas years of research confirms the benefits of high-quality child care for young children's intellectual, emotional, social, and physical development and later life outcomes. And whereas child care promotes the well-being of children and responds to the needs of parents, child care workers, and the broader community by supporting quality of life so that citizens can fully participate in and contribute to the economic and social life of their community. And whereas many studies show trained and knowledgeable early childhood educators and child care staff are the most important element in quality child care. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Vincent Badaway, proclaim October 26, 2011 as the 11th Annual Child Care Worker and Early Childhood Educator Appreciation Day here in the city of Port Colborne, in recognition of the education, dedication, and commitment of child care workers to children, their families, and the quality of life of the community. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Doucette. Councillor Kenny. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. The second proclamation is one that speaks of Restorative Justice Week. That whereas in the face of crime or conflict, Restorative Justice offers a philosophy and approach that views these matters principally as harm done to people and relationships. And whereas restorative justice approaches strive to provide support and opportunities for the voluntary participation and communication between those affected by crime and conflict, to encourage accountability, reparation, is that how you pronounce that? Reparation, thank you. Reparation, and a movement towards understanding feelings of satisfaction, healing, and sense of closure. And whereas this year's theme of Restorative Justice Week is revisioning justice, it is an opportunity to learn about restorative justice, educate, and celebrate along with other communities across the country during the week. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Vincent Badaway, proclaim the week of November 13th to November 20th, 2011 as Restorative Justice Week here in the city of Port Colborne. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Bodner, Councillor Desmarais. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Members, we're now going to move on to any notices of motion. Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I intend to bring forward the motion on September 26th regarding the Port Careers Capital Campaign, the Reach Out Center, and support of that.
Thank you, Councillor Butters. Members, we'll now move on to the introduction of the bylaws. Mrs. Grigg.
That the following bylaws be read a first, second, and third time. Finally passed, bylaw 568912011 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 53288309 being a bylaw to establish a committee known as the Port Colborne Seniors Advisory Council and to provide for appointments of members thereto. Bylaw 569012111 being a bylaw to authorize entering into a contract agreement with Activio for the supply and installation of a telephony system. Bylaw 569112211 being a bylaw to authorize entering into a contract agreement with Niagara Regional Broadband Network to supply and install fiber optic broadband to the Roselawn Center and the Fire Hall. And finally, bylaw 569212311 being a bylaw to authorize entering into a contract agreement with Stoke Construction Limited for the accessibility upgrades to 280 King Street, that being the museum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Danch. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Madam Clerk, the confirmatory bylaw.
That the following bylaw be read a first, second, third time and finally passed, bylaw 569312411 being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at special and regular meetings of Council, September 12, 2011.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Butters, Councillor Steele. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Members, before I go to a motion to go to closed session, I do want to announce that our next meeting is September 26th, which is a Monday, here in the chambers, beginning at 6:30 p.m., Committee of the Whole and Council, followed by a Committee of the Whole and Council meeting on Tuesday, October 11th, 2011, once again beginning at 6:30 p.m. here in the chamber. So I'll now ask for a motion to go into closed session to deal with the minutes of the in-camera meeting of August 8th, 2011, as well as to deal with confidential correspondence from Thomas A. Richardson, Solicitor Sullivan Mahoney, LLP, dated August 30th, 2011, concerning the Port Colborne Energy Park and the Ontario Municipal Board pre-hearing scheduled for September 27th, 2011, pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. As well, Confidential Engineering and Operations Engineering Division Report Number 2011-42 regarding strategic land acquisition pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. And lastly, Confidential Community and Corporate Services Clerks Division Report Number 2011-37 regarding appointments to boards and committees, the Seniors Advisory Council pursuant to Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. Can we mover and seconder, please? Councillor Bodner, Councillor Desmarais. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Have a wonderful week.